All right, good morning, everybody. Breakfast with the coach is on. So hopefully everyone will bang up soon and we will get started. I want to do a lecture today on cortisol, what you really need to know, and I'll get to that when our audience builds. So just been a few seconds, so I'll give you all a little bit of time to get on board. Let me know when you're out there. As you know, my emoticons aren't working for whatever reason. So gather on board and we will get this show on the road. Oh, I see a thumb. Okay, maybe my emoticons are working. So appreciate the well wishes. So I'm building up an audience pretty soon, pretty early. I want to get going on that. Hey, cuz, how you doing? Andrew, thank you. Yep, so people are hopping on board early today, so that's good. We'll get in, we'll get out. Got a lot to say, got a lot as usual. So, yes, indeed, it is the birthday boy here, folks. So, yep, I'm making time on my birthday to bring this breakfast with the coach to you. So, no excuses for not working. So, I'll get to the birthday stuff once we're finished. Both the PG and the X-rated birthday stuff. So just waiting for everyone to get on board, and then we will get started. So let's. Well, I guess everyone knows it's my birthday. So thank you, folks. Appreciate that. So always good when the sun and the moon align and the birthday falls on the same day as a refeed and the cycle diet and the cheat day and all that stuff. So yeah, always good when those things line up. So had a big honking slice of chocolate birthday cake for breakfast. Didn't blow out the candles because I just don't have the cardio to do that. So got that going. We're building an audience. So if you guys are ready, then I'm able, and we will get started. So I'm glad that we're building an early audience. So we'll get going. So one of the things, or two of the things, is everyone seeing me okay? My picture seems to be popping in and out. So yeah. So yeah, 56, age 56 today, or as I like to say, 46 with 10 years experience. So that's the way I'm looking at it. So we're going to get to that as soon as we're done here. So lots to get through. Just waiting for the audience to build, and it seems to be building. So one of the things, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to get started. So starting off on a not so great a note, because of my stance on the subculture of bodybuilding and the hardcore competitive world and the hardcore drug using world and why I got out of all that stuff. People keep sending me, all the notices that sort of reinforce the stuff I've been saying for the last several years. It doesn't fall on deaf ears, which is nice. Along that lines is two notes this week sent to me by people who are on board today. So one is a hardcore bodybuilder. I guess he's an Instagram sensation, which means nothing to me. I don't get that stuff, but has been put into a medically induced coma because of some kind of apparent drug overdose or something like that. Not going to mention his name, but what struck me as ironic there is the sort of freakazoid caricature appearance of this guy and his admitted steroid use and abuse and all that stuff. And like I said, I was in that world for a long, long time, and there's a lot of, it's a drug subculture, no matter how you look at it. What struck me as ironic is that this guy's a supplement line that's doing well when he freely admits that his freakazoid body is a result of steroids. One look at him is it's a result of not just steroid use, but steroid abuse. And sorry to hear, of course, that he's been put into a medically induced coma. But it strikes me as pretty ironic that these are the kind of people who become internet sensations, representing, the sort of lunatic fringe of the industry, whereas, true experts like JC Santana and Ripito, and if I dare put myself in that category, have meager followings, comparatively speaking. So it just speaks to the sort of level of society we live in now, where people are all about stimulus addicts, and the more extreme, the better. And yet these are people who are ending up in not so great a category. On the flip side of that is an article in the Perth newspaper of a 25-year-old female competitor who died from taking too many protein supplements. Yes, she had a pre-existing condition, but the fact of the matter is, if she wasn't devoted to the competitive side of the industry, she probably wouldn't have been instructed to take in so much protein that led to her, pre-existing condition. So if she wasn't a competitor in the hardcore end of the industry, chances are she'd still be alive today. 25 years old, leaves behind 2 kids. So these are the stories that swirl. These are the stories that are sent to me every week for me to comment on. And again, it kind of sets me up as being a target for people who are still in love with that end of the industry and in love with that end of the world. So I become a target for them to attack when I'm just pointing out what I know from, over 20 years experience at the very, very top of the bodybuilding industry. And why I got out of it is because it is nothing more than a drug subculture anymore. And why I stepped away from that. It's not health, it's not fitness, it's not any of those things. So, that's my stance. I stick to it. I'm sorry to hear about those people dying, or the young lady dying, and the other young fella, being in a medically induced coma to deal with whatever tragic overdose he took, white powder found in his home and all that stuff. Not unknown to me. The higher I got in the industry, the more recreational drugs were involved with everyone I knew, everything from cocaine to female competitors, figure competitors using methamphetamine to get ripped for a contest, to heroin, to Nubane, to all those things. And as an intelligent person, I just came to the conclusion, if you can't be part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. So I stepped away from that. I believe, Alan, you're the one that sent me the link about that young fella. Well, young to me anyway. If you want to put the links in the comment section, you guys, that's fine. I think, and you sent me the link to the young lady, 25-year-old lady who passed. If you guys want to post those up in the comment section, then you can all look a little later at what's going on there. So, unfortunate to start with all that stuff. I don't like starting with things like that. And, I don't like that everyone sends me this stuff, but I guess they think I'm going to be the one who stands up and talks about it. And I guess I don't mind playing that role. So, again, it's going to fall on deaf ears. It's just like, discussing diet and stuff. People treat this stuff now these days more like a religion, more like an us versus them camp. Now that we live in a post-facts world where the facts don't seem to matter anymore, which is most unfortunate. So my goal for today was to discuss cortisol. So I'm going to get to that right now and discuss that with all you guys. So cortisol, I think the reason I need to discuss it is, like insulin, cortisol is demonized in the fitness industry as this, demon hormone, this, evil hormone that you want to avoid. But demonizing cortisol the way the fitness industry tries to do represents a very kindergarten level of understanding of this very important and vital hormone. All hormones that the body makes serve vital functions. That's the way our bodies make them. That's why our bodies make them. Demonizing any kind of hormone that is naturally occurring in your body simply doesn't make any sense. And I'm going to tell you about that in this discussion. So hopefully you can hold your comments back just a little bit while I get into this, and then I'll welcome, of course, your questions and comments at the end. So again, referring back to my days at the top of the hardcore bodybuilding world, working with Olympia competitors and beyond that, part of the pharmaceutical drug stack of the bodybuilder back then was to take an anti-cortisol drug called cytidrin. And this, once again, represented that a little knowledge can be a very, very dangerous thing. A lot of people, a lot of bodybuilders ended up getting sick because of taking cytogen along with their steroid stacks and insulin and everything else. But even when it comes to cortisol, even a brief Google search about cortisol is full of ways to lower it. You end up on these bogus fitness sites, or not even bogus fitness sites, just ill-informed fitness sites that tell you, oh, you got to, lower your cholesterol or lower your cortisol and all these other things, rather than discussing the vital roles that cortisol plays in a balanced internal hormonal profile. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. It's a colossal mistake to demonize a naturally occurring hormone this way. But pop culture genius is full of reports and advisements and fear-mongering and demonizing of cortisol. People write and talk about things like swollen faces and thin skin and easy bruising and bone loss, osteoporosis, and high blood pressure, all being the results of that nasty catabolic hormone cortisol. And of course, we always link catabolic hormone with cortisol. But these effects of cortisol are almost always because of overdoses of it, and not because of a balanced amount of it doing its job as part of the checks and balances of the human endocrine system. That's what you got to keep in mind. Too much cortisol can be harmful, yes, just like too much testosterone or too much thyroid, too much estrogen, but too little cortisol can be just as harmful, just like too little testosterone, too little estrogen, too little thyroid. And too little cholesterol can lead to things like frequent infections, compromised immune system, which I'll get to, things like arthritis, and it disrupts natural appetite feedback loops. Again, just like too little of any naturally occurring hormone like thyroid, estrogen, leptin, testosterone, these can all be problematic if they exist in too little supply in our endocrine checks and balances system. So demonizing this naturally occurring hormone and trying worse in the fitness industry, trying to artificially suppress cortisol just doesn't make any sense, and it can lead to all kinds of issues. So let's talk about positive cortisol function. Okay, what are the functions of cortisol? Cortisol helps the body respond quickly and usefully to stress. That's very important. Now, did you know this? Cortisol can also stimulate appetite, boost your energy levels, improve digestion. Think about that one for a minute. Of all the ladies that write me that think they have SIBO or they're gluten intolerant and all these other things, they never bother for a minute to consider that artificially trying to suppress their cortisol levels the way the fitness industry instructs could actually harm their digestive system. So think about that one for a minute. Adequate amounts of cortisol improve digestion. So think about that. Other functions of cortisol: allows joints to move more freely, eases inflammation, eases pain. It's a natural pain reliever, relieves allergy symptoms. And when it's in natural balance with your more anabolic hormones, cortisol also enhances the immune system. It's an immune system enhancer. By stimulating the immune system, cortisol can be preventative against colds, against flus, against various infections, and even against cancer. How about that? Cortisol is important for good and healthy cardiac function. How about that? Think about that one as well. One of the side effects in my day when the bodybuilders started taking cytogen to suppress cortisol is they were ending up in emergency rooms with cardiac episodes. And one of the first things they were instructed to do was get off cytogen. So cortisol stimulates the response of the cardiac cells for adrenaline, allowing the heart to contract with vigor and with strength, especially in times of stress, whether that stress be physical, like working out, high intensity workouts, all right, or mental and emotional. So without enough cortisol present, the heartbeats are weak, they're weaker, and they're too rapid, especially under stress. So a lot of people experience arrhythmia, or they experience rapid heartbeat, things like that, whether that stress is physical or mental or emotional. Young mothers out there with too much on their plate, who don't get enough sleep, who aren't eating right, who are doing silly things like keto. You're introducing a lot of stress and at the same time trying to treat cortisol like some nasty hormone where it's the exact thing you need to help you adequately deal with that stress. So keep that in mind as well. So here's some things to consider. If the least amount of stress wipes you out, or after some emotional outburst, you feel completely exhausted, you may be deficient in cortisol. So think about that too. Who is telling you this kind of stuff in the fitness industry, the realities of the positive and constructive functions of cortisol? A lot of experiencing various kinds of burnout, maybe because you're artificially from the outside in trying to suppress your very natural and vital cortisol levels. A lot of people attribute this kind of stuff to adrenal burnout when it's actually a cortisol-induced adrenal burnout. So when you are in good health, your adrenal glands contain large reserves of cortisol, all right? But if and when you get burned out, burning the candle at both ends or whatever, your cortisol levels can be compromised, okay? So without ample circulating cortisol, your blood pressure will be low when you're under stress, and that can result in you feeling too fatigued to adequately face whatever that particular stress may be. So even diet-induced stress can lower cortisol in a way that has you avoiding that, and that can lead to actually things like binge eating and things like that. So think about that. Who's telling you that? So cortisol helps you withstand stress and not be blinded by one of the side effects of stress, which is stress-induced anxiety. So think about that as well. If your cortisol is too low and you're under stress, the stress itself can produce angst and anxiety, which the cortisol release in your body would help you to combat. So who's telling you that in the fitness industry? So cortisol helps to provide the additional energy your body may suddenly need when facing unexpected situations that pop up, and life happens to all of us. So if this situation that pops up lasts more than a few minutes, few days, few weeks, your body's going to rely even more on cortisol to cope well. So when a situation demands sudden additional energy, larger amounts of cortisol enter the bloodstream to help. So if you don't have enough of this stress-fighting hormone, cortisol, what is cortisol? Stress-fighting hormone. Get that mantra in your head. What is cortisol? It's a stress-fighting hormone. If you don't have enough of it, then you're likely to feel distressed, depressed, confused, and even distracted. And at the same time, you'll be having difficulties organizing your ideas as how to even deal with the stressful situation as it comes up. So in case you just missed that, get it through your head. Cortisol is your stress-fighting hormone. It's not your enemy, just like the lecture I did on insulin as well. So as you can see, trying to artificially diminish your natural cortisol production makes no sense if you don't have some kind of cortisol-related medical problem, and most people don't. So with appropriate amounts of cortisol, a natural hormone your body needs, stress won't depress you, and you will likely be better equipped to face that stress as well. Here's a personal story related to that. In March 2016, when my father passed, I had to fly back east and deal with all the situations as being the executor of his will and his power of attorney. I had to fly back east, deal with my mom, set up the funeral situations, 20 different things coming at me from all directions. Very, very sudden, very, very stressful. And I remember every morning thanking that my cortisol levels would be in check, because it was helping me deal with the stress in all the ways I mentioned above. So it helped me organize my thoughts. It helped me to face the stress in a healthful way, in a healthy way. All those things, regardless, rather than being on the fitness industry Kool-Aid drinking and thinking cortisol's bad, I'm under all this stress, my cortisol level's going to go up and make me look crappy. All I could think about was, thank goodness I treat my body in a way where now my cortisol levels are going to increase to help me deal with this stress, and it did. Most people, I've found a ton of people, and maybe you can relate to this, they have something happen, like a tragic occurrence in their life, the passing of a loved one or something, and what happens immediately after that? They get a cold, they get a flu, or they get a cold that won't go away. All these signs that your cortisol levels are low and your immune system is not getting boosted by having adequate amounts of cortisol. Fitness industry being the worst offenders because they keep demonizing this hormone as if it's something to be avoided and suppressed and repressed. So Remember, cortisol stored in the adrenal glands, often what is attributed to adrenal burnout is actually cortisol depletion. So think about that. Humans cannot live without adequate cortisol, period. Even mild deficiencies are going to wreak havoc in your body, resulting in all kinds of unwanted side effects. Think about this: hair loss, muscle loss, low blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, painful and inflamed joints. A lack of natural cortisol can lead to skin problems like eczema, psoriasis, and allergies. So think about that as well. Often what we attribute to food allergies is more indicative of so much food restriction from some crazy diet that it negatively impacts cortisol levels, leading to these side effects that I just mentioned. So think about those side effects in terms of possibly being related to cortisol deficiency. So a lot of the people in the industry, they write me and they keep telling me about keeping their cortisol levels down and things like that. And then in the same breath, they're telling me about all these side effects they have that they think is related to something in their diet, like gluten or something like that. So again, a misdiagnosis because of fitness industry nonsense. Another thing I'll just throw in here before I continue this conversation on cortisol is a reality check, folks. I've written 20 books, and I don't think people understand the amount of research that goes into writing 20 books. Too often on social media, we see people who think that a 2 or 3 day Google search is the same as research. It's not, okay? Trust me, it's not. And especially if that Google search leads to social media arguments and points. And that's what brings me back to what I said at the beginning of this show. The fellow that's been placed in a medically induced coma for a drug overdose has millions of followers, talking about his steroid abuse and stuff like that. And people are actually out there doing the real work of health and fitness have a meager following because it's just not sexy enough. It's just not exciting enough. It's just not stimulating enough for the we the sheeple out there. So if you care about your health and your well-being, you got to stop being distracted by shiny object syndrome and get the word out that there's people that actually know what they're talking about there. So let me get back to cortisol now. That was a little bit of a rant, but I'm known for that. Now let me get back to cortisol. Insufficient natural levels of cortisol can also give you flu-like symptoms and even fatigue, even when you don't have the flu and you should otherwise feel healthy. Think about that. How many people are going, that sounds like me? Tons, believe me. This side effect gets even worse under stress. How many of you, when you're under stress, you feel like you're sick? And it also gets worse in this kind of stress, like over dieting and overtraining. Think about that. People, how many competitors I knew in the past that right after a contest, they got sick. They got a cold, they got a flu, they got mono, all kinds of stuff. So people with insufficient cortisol experience inflammation all through their bodies, and particularly in their joints. Think about that. But inflammation all through their bodies, that includes the digestive tract that gets inflamed as well. So inadequate amounts of cortisol can inflame your digestive system. What's that lead to? That leads to things like IBS. It leads to things like what I call colon hockey, stomach distension, bloating, things like that. And no one ever tracks this back to a consideration of cortisol and lack of cortisol or lack of cortisol efficiency being able to do its job. This is the problem when we start demonizing the body. We need to stop this fitness nonsense, these wannabe gurus who try to teach you that your body is really, really stupid, okay? Your body is really, really brilliant. You just got to allow it to exercise its brilliance and stop trying to change and fix what isn't broken to begin with. So yes, cortisol does rise when you're under stress. That's one of its major functions. But in this sense, it's really an anti-stress hormone. Think about that. Cortisol rises during stress as a response to stress and to help your body handle stress, somatically speaking. So remember, cortisol doesn't cause stress. It's a response to stress. So treating cortisol like the enemy and demonizing it is like killing the messenger, okay? What you really need to control is your stress, okay? Cortisol surrenders. Listen to some of the other functions it does that you don't even have to think about. that helps you during times of stress. Cortisol helps surrender your energy stores at opportune moments. It can make your heart beat faster when it needs to be beating faster. It can increase your blood pressure in order to ensure a guaranteed supply of oxygen and nutrients to all parts of the body. It boosts blood sugar levels as well as provide working strength and energy, all right, for your blood sugar levels. When cortisol is in balance, it serves useful and important functions, and you need to remember this in spite of fitness industry mumbo jumbo demonizing cortisol, that people who aren't qualified to hang out their shingles online, that they know what they're talking about. Now let's look at another element. Let's look at cerebral effects of cortisol. Cortisol stimulates brain function under stress, and it stimulates the muscles, heart, and circulatory systems too. That's not a bad thing. Stimulation of these things is not a bad thing. If these effects of cortisol happen in the right physiological context when you need them, these are good things, not bad things. So, for instance, what does that mean? Cortisol can help fight jet lag. It can help fight fatigue. It can help fight ADD, confusion, hypoglycemia it helps with. Listen to this one, especially the ladies. Adequate amounts of cortisol and adequate cortisol function, okay, can help with sugar cravings, folks, and anxiety and irritability and low blood pressure and apathy. How many ladies out there experience episodes of sugar cravings combined with anxiety, combined with irritability, and combined with feeling under stress that you can't get out from under? Check your cortisol levels. Chances are they're too low because you're trying to suppress them because some fitness guru tells you your cortisol levels need to be kept low. Not true. Your cortisol levels need to be left alone so they can do the job of keeping you health and well-being, keeping you healthy. So now switching gears, cortisol was one of the first hormones discovered to be helpful with rheumatoid arthritis. Again, because of its effects on being anti-inflammatory. People with rheumatoid arthritis have very low levels of circulating blood cortisol. So what they find there, and rheumatoid arthritis is extremely painful. No doubt about that. Anyone that has it can tell you that. So cortisol can also prevent sclerosis, the fibrous tissue that replaces cartilage. And that limits and interferes with joint mobility. So you can see that positive function on the joints, like I mentioned above. So cortisol just prevents excessive production of major components that compromise joint health. One of the delicate checks and balances of our human endocrine system, that hormones exist in delicate checks and balances, and they exist for a reason. So it can slow the production and rein in the action of inflammatory agents like histamine, prostaglandins. Cortisol can also alleviate joint inflammation by blocking the inflammatory properties that make joints swell. So, yeah, Tom's just commenting there on the cortisol. So, yeah. So let me just finish my cortisol rant here, and then I'll get to your questions and stuff. So. Remember, it's an anti-inflammatory property. You get to be my age, happy birthday, age 56, the anti-inflammatory element of naturally occurring hormones. We want that. We don't want to suppress that. That's a good thing. So keep that in mind. So now here's another unknown element of cortisol. Cortisol can play a positive role during sexual activity. Cortisol helps provide energy and heightened awareness and enthusiasm, you know, once the heat gets moved up in a sexual encounter. If your cortisol is low, then, you know, your sexual performance may be not so great. No one's considering that. And in the terms of fitness industry, you know, a healthy looking body should be a healthy looking body should be a healthy sexually performing body as well. So cortisol serves a vital function in sexual performance. Who's telling you that in the fitness industry? So what you are being told in the fitness industry is cortisol is your wake-up hormone in the mornings. What I keeps coming across my desk from these fitness wannabes, these fitness gurus, is cortisol will be high when you wake up. You should spend the rest of the day trying to keep it down. No, you should leave it the F alone. So because the optimal levels are released in the morning of cortisol, this is a good thing. It can lead you to being more active and energetic during the day and sleeping better at night. All part of our human endocrine balance, checks and balances. So having elevated levels of cortisol in the morning is a sign of health and well-being. It gives you the energy through adrenal response and things like that to get through your day, being active, energetic, dealing with stress, and sleeping better at night. So why aren't you hearing about any of these influences? In fact, another indicator of cortisol deficiency is regularly waking up tired and sluggish, even though you slept well all night. Think about that. How many of you out there wake up tired and sluggish, even though you slept well all night? That's another sign of cortisol deficiency. So stop trying to depress it and keep it down. All hormones do their jobs at a delicate dance and balance with their partner hormones. So trying to minimize your morning cortisol secretion, as fitness industry pundits tell you to do, can actually make you feel more sluggish during the day and suffer disrupted sleep at night, which will depress your cortisol levels even more, and then you create that negative feedback loop that'll keep you suffering. So the lesson is to stop second guessing your body's natural hormone functions and processes. They exist for good reasons. This industry and its experts, wannabe experts who aren't doctors and who haven't been to med school and who don't do real research, they want to try to tell you that your body is really, really stupid, and only with their help can your stupid body function better. But your body is actually really, really brilliant, and if you get these people out of the way and respect the brilliance of your body and how amazingly brilliant and intelligent it is, and you abide in its wisdom through monitoring and gauging your biofeedback, then you're going to be a more healthy and robust person. That's how I coach people. Get out of your own way. Stop ignoring your biofeedback. Use your biofeedback. Learn from the wisdom of your own body and act accordingly. So sometimes the wisdom of your own body, what that means is don't do anything. There's not every single bit of stimulus you get doesn't require you to do something in response. Leave the body alone, okay? Now, because of these positive and beneficial effects of cortisol and its synthetic variation have been used for a long time, like I said, treating various forms of arthritis and the inflammation that arthritis causes, as well as other inflammatory conditions, including inflammation in the digestive tract, which so many females seem to suffer these days. So something you might want to have checked with your doctor. So cortisol prevents the production and release of substances in the joints that lead to inflammation, things like nitric oxide, for example. Now, here we go again with the fitness industry, seeing everything as black and white with no shades of gray. The fitness industry likes to glorify nitric oxide for its muscle building, while demonizing cortisol simply because it's catabolic. But as we see here, human endocrinology and biochemistry exists in very delicate balance. Nitric oxide isn't all good, and cortisol isn't all bad. So you have to stop just looking at its effects on your cosmetic appearance and look at its effects on keeping you alive and well and healthy and free from disease. Okay, so very, very important. So cortisol can be useful as a component of cancer treatment. It can lessen inflammation, eliminate fever, relieve pain, stimulate the appetite, which is more important than you think. A lot of people out there think, oh, I don't want a stimulated appetite. Actually, yeah, you do, because that's a sign of an optimized metabolism. We got to stop this North American diet mentality madness, stinking thinking that things like stimulated appetite are bad things. Like, no, it's a good thing. It's your response to it that's a bad thing. Learn to be mature and act like an adult when it comes to your appetite. Don't try to artificially suppress it, because then you set in motion a whole bunch of other reactions to that aren't healthy. So again, thinking in reverse of what's actually good for us, and counterintuitive thinking that the North American fitness industry wants you to think in terms of always, sort of depriving your body and having it breaking down rather than building up. Stimulating appetite is a really, really good thing. Cortisol and its derivatives are also used in combination with other anti-cancer drugs to help people tolerate the side effects of cancer therapy and things like that. So now, of course, other things are going to contribute to what I'm about to say as well, but high, seemingly uncontrollable sugar cravings during times of stress can also indicate cortisol deficiency. I touched on this earlier, but remember that cortisol helps keep blood sugar and blood pressure in balance and at optimal levels, especially during times of stress. So cortisol is also part of that stress hormone feedback loop, along with aldosterone and many other hormones that exist in the check and balance feedback loop of times of stress. So in times of stress, lower cholesterol can mean lower blood sugar and sugar cravings. So if you're a worrier and you have a tendency to munch on candy and gummy bears and the kids' snack foods and chocolates and all the rest, this could be something worth looking into. Also, if you're on some of these ridiculous low-carb diets that are in fact in and of themselves stress-inducing, that can lead to sugar binges because of cortisol deficiency, adrenal burnout because of cortisol depletion within the adrenals, etc. Who's telling you about this? Nobody. They just glorify the low-carb diet because you'll lose a little water up front, and that must be good. Well, what happens down the road? So as you can see, trying to manipulate delicate hormonal balance of your body can throw everything out of whack and create a cascade of ill health effects and negative cosmetic effects as well. So now look at it in dire terms. If your body is deprived of cortisol, you'll die in a matter of days without cortisol. Cortisol helps maintain appropriate blood pressure and blood sugar levels, and that's why I keep repeating it, because it's so important. Cortisol also helps retain water and salts in the body. That's why they demonize it in the cosmetic end of the fitness industry. Oh, you're going to retain water because your cortisol levels is high, and that's why they demonize it. But retaining water and body salts and preventing them from being unnecessarily excreted in the urine also serves a delicate maintenance of checks and balances in your system, like blood pressure, like blood sugar levels, like cell integrity, things like that. The fact that natural cortisol helps your body retain water and body salts when needed, means you'll be walking. Doesn't mean you're going to be walking around like some puffy, bloated mess. Okay, this is the industry, fitness industry mythology that's done more harm than good when it comes to understanding delicate endocrine hormonal balance and healthy human biochemistry. So very, very, very important stuff to think about. So getting near the end here, so if you just hold off your comments, hopefully you're enjoying this so far, getting through to you that how important your healthy cortisol levels are to maintain. Hormone deficiency of cortisol, again, what are the indicators? Low blood pressure, weaker heartbeat, rapid heartbeat, dizziness upon standing, what's known as orthostatic hypotension, overall drowsiness or fatigue, disrupted sleep. And of course, no single symptom in and of itself means that you're low in cortisol, but it is things to think about. So other factors can be involved, of course, but these are some indicators to look for in your own life. So another sign of cortisol deficiency, confusion, even adult ADD, combined with social media stimulus addicts. If you're bouncing around social media pages and then you can't concentrate for more than 5 minutes, that could be a sign. A person who's low in cortisol is easily distracted and can have trouble sustaining focus for long periods. That's something to think about, and that's especially troubling if you're an adult, and even more troubling if you're a parent. So adequate normal cortisol levels help to clarify and organize your thoughts, sharpen your mental focus, prevent memory lapses, and enhance your ability to memorize things. Think about that. How important are those things, right? Clarifying and organizing your thoughts, that's mental fitness. Sharpen your mental focus, that's mental fitness. Prevent memory lapses, that's mental fitness. Enhance your ability to memorize things, that's mental fitness, okay? So cortisol plays vital functions in your mental fitness. For example, one study with mice low in cortisol, they showed that they had difficulty finding solutions to stressful situations. They don't adequately recognize the situation and don't know how to face it. Sounds like a lot of people I know. Whereas mice who weren't deprived of their cortisol levels could solve the issue and get to the cheese, so to speak. So interestingly enough, healthy cortisol levels increase and optimize the immune system, all right? But like so many other hormones, too much cortisol or its derivatives can lower immunity and leave you exposed to illness. So cortisol stimulates the production of T cells and protects T cells as well. So cortisol has a bunch of effects in anti-cancer activity. I'm going to skip those because this is running long, and we're not talking about anti-cancer stuff here. We're talking about Legionnaire's disease, Epstein-Barr disease, things like that. So natural and optimum cortisol levels stimulate immune system function and fight off viral and bacterial and even parasitic infections. Think about that. It's also true that in high exogenous doses, cortisol and its derivatives are known to depress the immune system. So what we see here is that, like other hormones, more isn't better. More is harmful, but so is too little, so is too much. So in fact, too much cortisol comes with a litany of problems and complications. That's what the fitness industry wants to tell you about, but they're uninformed in terms of why your body would produce a hormone if it has all these nasty effects to it. So just like thyroid, just like estrogen, just like testosterone, too little is bad, too much is bad, and the delicate balance that we evolved to have leads to health and well-being. So in short, you need to value the hormones of the body and the functions they serve. The fitness industry has this upside down. Cortisol is a response to stress, not the cause of stress. If your cortisol levels are so high that it's impacting you cosmetically, holding water, putting on fat easy, then this is an indication that your life is out of control. Your life has too much constant and repeating stress. The answer is not to suppress cortisol. That's like killing the messenger. The answer is to do something about your life that is so full of stress and anxiety and angst to begin with. So all these things that I pointed out, okay, cortisol is not your issue, all right? Your stress in your life is the issue. So people have to face that without all the yeah buts, and they have to stop relying on all these fitness industry wannabes who think demonizing hormones like insulin and cortisol by telling you your body's really stupid and you got to minimize these hormones. They don't know what they're talking about. So once again, like I said, a 2 or 3 day Google search that has you ending up on websites like bodybuilding.com. That's not research, folks. So let's get real about getting real out there. And remember, your body's hormonal endocrine system, your body doesn't manufacture any hormone it doesn't need for whatever reason to serve a vital function. So looks like I'm getting through to you guys. I'm seeing lots of emoticons, which is nice to have them back. I don't know what I did to change that. But now, having ranted about all that for the last 40 minutes or so, I'm ready to take your questions and comments and whatever you want to know. Hopefully, I don't see anybody that posted those links. If you want to post those links to the 2 people I was talking about, that would be good. Oh, now I'm seeing comments. Sorry, folks. My mouse was frozen there. So let me get... yeah, Ulf is just saying, a balanced look at fitness. Well, that's what fitness should be. Balance isn't a goal to have. Balance is something you do. It's a way you live. So that's very, very important in terms of those things. That's why the hardcore end of the industry competing in everything like that is anything but balance. Don't believe any top level competitor who tells you that they lead a very balanced lifestyle. That's impossible, okay? You can't compete in this industry and lead a balanced lifestyle. What a myth. But they want to glorify the competitive experience. And believe me, many of them never made it to the level I made it to. I interacted with every top pro there was, male and female, and all the magazine publishers and all the top photographers. And I can tell you about the cult and subculture that's involved in that. So Jennifer says, mine are off the planet. I get all those things you just mentioned. I think I'm just special. Well, something to look into, Jennifer. I mean, you don't want to take your health for granted, and you especially folks out there, you don't want to put the word fitness in front of taking your health for granted. There's too much of that going on in this industry. Drives me insane. So Rob Laguna has just taught, you might want to check him out. He's talking about one of the services he uses with his clients to help with stress reduction. I just use basic one-on-one coaching. Clients find it easier to check in with someone online through email because it's less intimidating than face to face, and they can sort of vent their stress issues at me, and I consider all that part of the coaching experience. So if people can vent, then they get something out of their system, and that's good for getting rid of stress, dealing with stress, things like that. So sometimes coaches can serve that function. So let me see. And exercise, of course, helps relieve stress, but exercise also helps. You need the elevated cortisol levels when you're exercising as well, for the reasons I said earlier about cardiac health. So, Monica's asking how can you improve healthy levels of cholesterol if you feel sluggish in the morning? Typically, there's a sign that there's something else going on. So, first of all, I would get medically checked out. But secondly, again, it's the stress, not the cortisol. So eliminate the stress and the cortisol balance comes back in line. So that's very important. So Lee wants to know, he or she, Lee can be male or female name, suffer from PTSD and have been in treatment for 5 years. That sucks, Lee. Sorry to hear that. Over the last 2 years, I've had a complete breakdown physically. I've now been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Has the constant anxiety depleted my cortisol to a point where I'm now in constant pain and suffering other ailments? Sure, of course, that can be part and parcel of that. Absolutely. So check that out with your doctor. Find out if there's things you can do to remedy that. But again, stress relief, and of course, that if you're PTSD, that comes with a whole list of different factors that you have to deal with. So So very, very important. So I appreciate all the birthday wishes, folks. I'm touched by that. You can just get your cortisol levels checked. Sometimes the cortisol levels can be fine, but your body's not using the cortisol in a good way. So what I would suggest is, first and foremost, stop the industry noise, stop the industry gobbledygook, stop following someone because they have an IFBB Pro card, okay? That's just meaningless, okay? If you want to find out about these things, you go to endocrinology websites, you go to PubMed, you go to WebMD, you find out who the experts are and you read their stuff, okay? You don't go to bodybuilding.com and you don't listen to some platehead who says, well, I was 10th in the Olympia, so I know how to deal with all your hormones. No, and you don't take exogenous forms of other hormones, all right? If you're injecting growth hormone, testosterone, blah, 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 taking oral anti-estrogens and all these other things, well, expect that your hormone system is going to be completely out of whack. Why are you surprised when that happens? So not to mention, if you're someone who's constantly stressing, interesting, I don't know how many of you follow my Facebook page regularly, but if you saw the other day, I posted that Facebook post with the gravestone, sort of a warning, like, here lies Jane Smith. She devoted her life to obsessing about her diet and her weight. Hopefully now she can rest in peace. What happens the very next day? Talk about life imitating art. The very next day, I get that article sent to me from Perth, Australia, where that 25-year-old mother of two died from taking in too much protein because she had an unknown rare condition. Had she not been competing, she wouldn't have been advised to take in so much protein. She'd still be alive today. So there you go. People will say, well, I know what the fitness industry people will say right away, because someone wanted me to do a whole breakfast with a coach topic on this, but I can't, because they'll say, well, she had a pre-existing condition. Yes, she had a pre-existing condition, but if she wasn't competing and obsessing about her weight and her body and how it looked, then she wouldn't have been advised to take in this high protein, silly diet, and she'd be alive today because of it, more than likely. So I think people forget that my viewpoint on this is from being at the top of the industry and on the inside of it as well. So, a lot of people talk from the fringes and they want to talk like they know what they were talking about. I lived it. I was in it. Like I said, with all the top people and all the lies that are told to sell supplements. Same with that unfortunate young guy who's overdosed and he's now in a medically induced coma for recreational drugs. But take a look at him. I mean, it's just indicative of the drug subculture, and the fact that someone like that has millions of followers boggles my mind. So, we got to get out of this sort of hardcore stimulus addict nonsense. Someone like that's making a fortune selling supplements. Does it look like that body was built on supplements? Like, let's get real. So all those things. So Nancy wants to know, is it possible for a woman to change her physique from bulky muscles to more sculpted, as you talk about in shape and sculpt videos with Krista? Well, of course it's possible, but it depends on someone's beginning structure. All right, so it depends on the structure someone has to begin with. If you're 5'1", and you've always had sort of wide clavicles and a wide pelvis, then there's so much you can do with that. Not everyone's built with Angelina Jolie's genetics. Not everyone's 5'11" or 5'10" with narrow hips. So you have to work with the cards that have been dealt to you in terms of structural anatomy. But within that, of course, you can shape and sculpt. One of the things, that's a good question, Nancy, because one of the things that comes across my desk is ladies that say, well, my legs build too easily, so I want to make my legs smaller. Well, you're not going to train with weights and make your muscles smaller. But if you don't train your legs at all, then they're going to get skinny fat. So they're going to look worse than they were to begin with. So you're in a catch-22. Which do you want more? Do you want to have muscular legs, or do you want to let them go and have gravity take its effects and have skinnier fat legs that don't look any better? So a lot of the times people want solutions that there's no workarounds for. And people have to keep that in mind as well, and they don't. They think that for whatever problem that they're specifically think they have, their wish bias tells them there's a magic solution. So anyone who tells someone, I put muscle on too easy in my lower body and I want to take the muscle off, the only way to take muscle off your lower body is to do long endurance training, long runs, but that'll make everything else skinny as well. So as you deplete all the amino acids from your muscles. And as I say that, no, that's not an indication that you need branched chain amino acid supplements. What a colossal waste of money that is. You don't need any supplements, folks. So let's get that through your heads as well. So good question. Led to some other stuff. Any other questions, folks? Let me just see if I'm scrolling here. Brenda says, love this real talk. Thank you for this info. Well, spread the word, Brenda. I mean, all you people. Lisa wants to know a diet that can help with cortisol. Well, the diet that helps with cortisol, Lisa, is the diet that doesn't get in the way of it. So diets that are trying to suppress hormones and things like that. Low carb diets, things like that, where you're not realizing the hormonal damage you're doing. Keto diets. Keto is a breakdown state of your body. Your body shouldn't be in a constant breakdown state. It's not healthy. It's completely catabolic. So it's no surprise in a catabolic state that your catabolic hormones are going to rise. So things like that make sense. So again, a plant-based, healthy, whole food diet, start there. I mean, it's not rocket science. But even now, this whole eat clean movement is producing more harm than good because it comes with all these fantastic fantasy rules that only their authors can give you, of course. Eat clean used to just mean pick from the produce section of your store and eat healthy starch staples. That used to be what eat clean meant. Now it means all these other things with all these rigid religious rules to dieting, which is just nonsense. So let's get real about getting real. So again, hopefully you guys benefited from this lecture on cortisol. I'm tired of wannabe fitness experts, personal trainers, and the rest demonizing cortisol, not knowing what the hell they're talking about. So again, a 2 or 3 day Google search on bodybuilding.com isn't research, folks. And keep that in mind as well. So I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to inform you. Oftentimes that means taking a stance. I'm not wishy-washy. I'm going to take a stance on what I've seen, what I know, what I've experienced, and try to use that to your benefit. The reason sometimes I talk hard is because that's the only thing that'll penetrate the noise out there. So, someone who's all like juice produced, like that fella online that I mentioned, how you get millions of followers when it's obvious that your body is the result of, a Frankenstein chemical experiment. I mean, that's beyond me. How does that equate to having a requisite knowledge of anatomy and biochemistry and physiology and all the rest of the things. We need, you guys, you consumers need to stop being distracted by shiny objects, okay? Especially if they come in the form of a ripped physique that's only maintained for, you know, the competition season of the year. So let's get that going as well. So, you know, experts are few and far between. I'd like to think that I've earned my way as an expert. Behind me, over my shoulder there, you see just some of the books I've written, the Hard Gainer Solution on top, my Abel Approach book on the bottom, and everything in between. And that's just some of the books that are in hard copy. Other of my books are only downloads. You can find them on my website. So again, I'm going to get to celebrating my birthday. I'm going to head out and blow out and do the PG birthday celebration and hopefully get into some trouble with an R-rated celebration of my birthday. That being said, please hit the share button, folks. Share these videos. I post them later to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to get out there. And yes, I know I get attacked with vitriol and stuff by a lot of other people as well. So be it. I got pretty thick skin and pretty wide shoulders, so that's okay with me. But if you think you benefit from these Breakfast with the Coach sessions, or there's something intelligent in there you want someone to consider, please share these videos. Let's get them out there. Let's get people paying attention to the right things. I just said in a recent podcast we just recorded, part of the issue with people never seeing results is they don't know the difference between working hard at the right things, working hard at the wrong things, and working hard at the useless things. And if you don't know the difference, then you end up just going round and round and round. All right. So no one ever traveled a distance by sitting on a stationary bike. So keep that in mind. So you might have pedaled 8 miles, but you never traveled 8 miles. And that's the difference. The map is not the territory, as the saying goes. So on that note, folks, I am going to be out of here and go have some more birthday cake, get chocolate all over my face and things like that, because I'm on the cycle diet, rocking the cycle diet. Andy, if you're still out there, I'll have leftover birthday cake if you're interested. You can come by and pick that up. I can no longer do a whole birthday cake on my own. Not at this age. Used to, but I know you can. So if you're out there, shout out. You can have my leftover birthday cake so I don't have to freeze it. And that's it for me, folks. I appreciate the thumbs and the hearts. Throw them across the screen. And like I said, share, please, by all means. So that's it on cortisol. I hope you learned something. And then next week I'll be back with more Breakfast with the Coach and to field all your questions. Good questions. Nice, intelligent questions that we get here all the time. So until next time, folks, thanks for being out there. If you weren't out there, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to be here. So, another year older, hopefully a year wiser. And the older I get, the younger I used to be. So that's it for now, folks, and I will see you next time.